Thank you, John. Your hourglass is turned over. Excellent. Now we know all things pass quickly away, like sand in an hourglass, a dream, a bubble, a flash of lightning. That's the way to contemplate. So welcome, everyone. Good to enjoy things passing quickly away, you know. Here we are. While it happens, I'm just sort of, looking at you all right now, taking you in. Thank you. Thank you for coming. One of the old things about Zen was selling water by the river, and it's something we all have, but we need to talk about it somehow and that's the thing that when we talk about it together, we create a kind of field of knowledge that we all participate in. We're all implicated in. And so that's what we're doing. It's a nice thing to be in a conspiracy like that. Thank you. So we've been talking about, in a way, the necessity of being lost and the necessity of darkness in the path, and actually just your life generally, and that everyone who avoids darkness, somehow their life starts to, it's like eating, one of the old images was eating a painting of cake. And but if you let the whole of life in, then something more interesting happens. And Yunmen did this great thing where he, I'll just read this koan of his. We've been working with his one about you come and go by daylight, you make people out by daylight. But suddenly it's midnight in men. Enormous changes at the last minute. Suddenly it's midnight. What happened? And then and there's no moon, no sun, no lamp. But somewhere you have been, somewhere it might be possible, but if it's somewhere you have not been, if it's a place you have not been, how will you get hold of something? And that koan is, it's quoted in the Blue Cliff Record. It's not the main koan in the Blue Cliff Record, but it's quoted in the koan that's very related to that as a sort of, cousin koan or sister koan. And this one goes, everyone has their own light. If you try to see it, you can't. It's dark, dark. Now, what is your light? And apparently he said this over and over again, according to Yuan Wu, who probably would know, even though it was hundreds of years before, but the story was, he said it for 20 years, he would just say this to people very regularly. And he was a very patient teacher in that way. And his brilliance didn't mean he wasn't patient. So what is your light? And then after some years of this, apparently someone asked him, well, what would you say? And he said, the kitchen storeroom, the temple gate. And I'll go into that later. And then again, that didn't help that much for people. Or anyway, again, someone else asked him, well, what is all this stuff about everyone has their own light? And he said, it's better to have nothing than to have something good. You can tell there it comes full circle because he's back in the dark again. Yeah, it's better to be feeling your way in the dark without prejudices and ideas than whatever the other thing is. so, and there's a Shito poem that we did a whole session on once, but it says, within the light there's darkness, but don't look upon it as darkness. And within the darkness there's light, but don't meet it as light. And Yunmen is very familiar with that poem, and so it had some influence on him. And the thing I like about his having just said this for 20 years, because he's trusting the field we build up. It's not that nobody got it in 20 years, but then there were a lot of people around him who understood. And then the new people coming in, it was easier for them to make their way. And that's what that whole project really, PZI, you know. And people did say that people at Yunmen's place were disturbing, as in they didn't have the conventional views about things. You know, Hakwan said that. And I can well believe it. But there's something marvelous, isn't it? This consistency of he's over and over again. He's saying, if you look into the dark, what you're seeking will appear that way, not by trying to push the dark away and choose the light. And he had a attendant who was kind of well known, who stayed with him, I think for like for many years. There's a longer story, an interesting story, but it's a longer story than that. And then but he stayed with him for many years, and he was a smart person. Most of the people around Yunmen were brilliant, you know. Zen tends to attract people who, I don't know, are creative and smart in some way. And but in spite of whatever other people thought of him, he just didn't get it. And so and yet he's with the greatest master. So he's with the master for 18 years. And Yunmen would ask him things. And a lot of the time Yunmen would just say, what is it? It's a good koan, right? What is it? It's like bare, you know, all stripped down, bare bones. There's no, what is it? So if you just ask it, like right now, let's ask ourselves, what is it? Just quietly to yourself, or loudly to yourself, I don't mind. What is it? If you just look inside, and what is it? And you notice there's a part of the psyche tries to cling and grasp, but don't do that either. Just ask without I don't know, trying to mess with without trying to mess with the universe or force something out of the universe. Just what is this? What is it? What is it? What is it? We would just sit together with that for a bit. And he would ask that over and over again. And the person would say, they'd say these great things because it's a brilliant person. You'd say these amazing things. And you know, just laugh. And they'd go about their day. Now, could you write a letter to this person? You know, and sometimes he'd quote, he was well read, and he'd quote these elaborate things out of scriptures, and no, it wasn't that. And then he'd try and be brilliant, and then he'd yell and all those things. No, it wasn't that. And but it can't be something that didn't come out of your own heart. It's something that you own, like your life. You know, you own, your life is yours. And so anyway, and clearly there was a lot of affection between them, and they were together every day for years, you know. except, on holidays and off days and things. But, and then one day after 18 years, Yunmen said, "What is it?" And he said, "I got it. I got it." And Yunmen said, "Tell me." And he said, "Oh, I can't say." It's great. And Yunmen just smiled and didn't say anything. And then he kept going. And then after a couple of years later, he felt, and then he went off and taught, became a teacher himself. But I like that. For 18 years, every day he asked the question. And a lot of Yunmen's teachings were just taken from the questions he'd asked this guy. People would write them down. And Yunmen didn't like people writing down his questions because he thought, when you write something down, sometimes it's a way of, something passing from his mind onto the paper without passing through anybody else's psyche, and people would write it down without even grasping it. But actually, I think it was the attendant did, wore a paper robe and wrote everything down inside the paper robe. So we're grateful to him. He was right to write it down. So now let's take the other one. Everyone has their own light. It's not kind of too hard, is it? Let's go through it. Everyone has their own light. But if you reach for it, if you try to see it, you can't. It's dark, dark. Okay. Most of us have that experience, I will understand it now, and that we've already separated ourselves from it then, It's dark, dark. Now, what is your light? And so we take a dip down in the darkness. He says, so from there, if you're in the dark, what is your light? Pretty much you can tell that Yunmen taught the great way in a very imaginative and kind of daring and dashing way, really. But you can also tell there's something simple about what he was teaching. You have your own light. If you try to see it, you can't. The darkness is dark, dark. Now, what is your light? And so let's sit with that for a bit. What is my light? What is my light? So we do the same thing we did with what is this? What is my light? And just be, there's nothing better we can do with our lives, really. So what is my life? Just like, and you notice how I can either reach out and what that feels like. I get a bit anxious when there's something in my chest tight, or I can let it come to me. One of the other teachers said, let things come to you, let the 10,000 things advance and meet you. What is my light? And you can perhaps you can tell a tremendous sense of relief. And I'm being carried, I woke up in the morning and looked in the mirror and there was Yunmen. I woke up in the morning and a voice said, today, don't worry about things. Today, just relax. Yunmen will do everything for you. And just when you want to have breakfast, or do zazen, do zazen. What? Now, so just again, what is your light? And just let it come to you, and perhaps you can feel when it comes to you. If you don't struggle with it and one of the things you might do is judge yourself if you don't know, or you might know a little bit and then try and pretend to yourself that it's more. All these things we do, and they're not necessary because we already have the light, but it's all right, whatever we do. So what is my light? And to just sit with the wonder and curiosity. What is my light? What is my light? And don't try to strangle the koan for its meaning, to make it spit it out, Spanish Inquisition. Don't make it confess, Just, it's a friend, keep company with it. Yeah. What is my light? And okay, so we can tell how there's no need to go from here anywhere. Whenever we're really here in life, it's enough, it's good to be together. The whole world is keeping us company, the stars and the trees and the birds going to rest here, or the night creatures coming out if it's already dark where you are. The night cars driving around. And it's enough, isn't it? Like just feel the here-ness of it. Here is this sort of marvelous place that has always been waiting for us. We didn't have to invent or develop theories about, because theories always take us away from it. So here we are. And here always we can tell that we don't have to push away, one of the things, we don't have to push away the darkness to find the light. When we mentioned that yesterday, but when we try to be pure, everything gets piled up in this one little corner that gets called impure or evil or something like that. And it's a problem with, it's a problem, great religious problem about Puritanism and so on. And interesting, particularly came out of the Mediterranean, monotheisms, but it's everywhere. And you notice that, not everybody does, not all Christians do that. A lot of Christians in Zen, that's probably not what they're doing. And there's a certain sort of marvelous sense of being in the path that can happen. But for the moment, it's just, you don't have to worry about that too much. It's just enough to notice that I don't have to push things away, which also means I don't have to judge myself. I can't do this, or this thing I did in the past is in my way. That's true that karmic things can rise up and get in your way. I mean, I've worked with people who'd murdered people, and it probably wasn't great for the person who was murdered, but it really wasn't good for the person who did the murdering either, because they were haunted, And so we'll notice things like that. But Hakuin says this great thing: if you do Zazen even once, it wipes away beginningless crimes. So if you can do that for Hakuin, who is truly a wild creature, probably do that for you. So, yeah, there's a truth in that in a way you're blessed. When you do Zazen, you enter the eternal now, and it's going to be okay. And so that's why I don't know, I think I noticed for me that one of the things that happened as the awakening started to take me over, my heart kind of became more open. I wouldn't say it became sophisticated, but it became more open, and I feel like that's part of my life path, is the heart keeps opening. And so we can be generous with each other. And also, when we meet each other, we'll notice, if I'm closed off because I want to make a good impression, is a good reason. I'm frightened. I'm frightened of not making all those things that happen to people when they close off. And you feel when you're teaching, if you're teaching or a leader, you can tell that doesn't really work when you're frightened and trying to impress people and get the right thing out there, So there's some way in which we just have to show up and be here. If we go there, we're all there. If we come, actually, it's not even there, it's here. If we come here, we're all here. And I got sick about the beginning of the epidemic. I was pretty sick for a while, and I thought it was really good for everybody, including me, especially me, if we kept the temple going. So that's how we started the online temple, and it was a great thing. But I could tell that most of my life I've had a memory that was either photographic or close to it, and I don't know what I want, but my mind reaches for the pillow in the night. I reach for something and out comes a koan or out comes a poem. And I couldn't do that. And it took me a while to admit to myself that I couldn't do that. And some of that's back now, so which is great as I got better. So, and then I realized I didn't have to do that. All I had to do was go there. I had to go into the vastness, into the now. And everybody would come. I didn't have to be clever or brilliant or whatever it was. It was a kind of nice thing to notice, that we can, to show up with your own true life is always enough to meet people. And that a lot of what Zen is about is meeting. You really just got to meet each other. And so one of the things, so let's just go into that. Where is your light? And feel that again. And you can feel like, where is my light? And you feel like if you're just meeting the koan, just the way we bow in the Zen, you can just bow to the koan. You can do anything you want, really. But you can just say, good morning, koan. Like that. And the koan, you never know what the koan will do back, but it will certainly become more friendly. And so just feel that friendliness of just, what is my light? And now like the other thing to notice is, what's it like to, with that sensibility, without trying to reach for something, be good at something, whatever it is, impress ourselves. What's it like to be here? If you look in your heart, what's it like to be here? And just feel your heart, And if that's hard, that's okay. Just notice that actually, what the hell does he mean? But mainly we know that we're no longer anxious. And the mind is clear, the body is no longer anxious, said a great old, those women actually. The mind is enlightened, the body is no longer anxious. You can feel that now. If I'm just with the koan, what is my light? I can connect with you, and it's fine to be. And then we don't have that fear. If I smile at that person, they may think I'm an idiot. We don't have much of our. I have this very tough, gnarly friend who called me, didn't know I was in Sesshin, and called me, and so it was, and I picked it up, and and I said, "How's your relationship?" And he said, "Not so good." And why? He's tough all the time. He's in charge, and he said, "Yeah, I know." And we talked about how one of the great things in life is to let somebody else impact us, to let them touch us, touch our hearts. And that's something we armor ourselves against because we're not in charge, But if we let that open, then tears are there and joy is there and all that's there, and it's good. It's good. It's not something to be fixed. So then we realize that Zen is not about flattening everything out. That's there are lots of Zen phrases for that situation where you're so good at meditation, you don't have a life. Hakuin's teacher said, he was so good at deep meditation. Hakuin's teacher said, still watching over a corpse in a coffin, eh? A demon watching, he called it a demon watching over a corpse in a coffin. So, and you don't have to be that. You can just be human. Is the thing. So I think that's been one of the big things about the development of how we have become who we are as a community, but also how we've become as a community of teachers and leadership, but just all of us really, and everybody owns it, and everybody helps design it. We help design it by our own experience, by our own what appears in our inner life, how the koan touches us and comes forth. So there is that. What else was I going to say? Oh, the other thing is you'll notice that as you're, Matsu said, what is Buddha? In answer to what is Buddha, he said, your thoughts and feelings, this heart and mind. And many people think, oh, that's your thoughts, but it's actually your thoughts and feelings. And And so to include that, you have to include, you can't be perfect and have feelings, right? I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but it seems glaringly obvious to me. And because you're going to, by definition, feelings are about the joining and becoming one with the transformation of things. So we might say it's serene, but it's serene in a waveform. And it's sort of like, and so then we realize if I'm disturbed and I have a bad day in Sesshin, say, or whatever it is, a bad 2 or 3 lifetimes in California, whatever it is we have, then we'll see that it's all right. That too is in the Tao. And then you'll notice that a bad day in Sesshin is not bad, you know. And there's a kind of natural, that turning towards it. Yunmen said, forget about the light, give me the reaching. Somebody I've known pretty well said, oh, this is pretty much the anniversary of my 30th year of doing Sesshin. And I said, oh, good. And very good. And he said that he didn't know what to do. He said he was having a hardest time. Like, I don't know, his body didn't work and the session seemed boring him. And then he realized he had to let it. We started with the koan about the dark. It's midnight. No moon, no sun, no light. He felt he just had to let that happen. And then for him, it was full of grief and the memory of grief. And so he had to let that happen and so on. And then inside that, there's a kind of sweetness, you know, a loving quality. It's kind of, most of us notice that, but it's easy to just like hold all that off, you know. And then I'm doing good zazen, and I survived my own psyche and managed to push it down in its burrow again, you know. So, so there's a certain way in which I don't think there's a right way to be, and some people are very emotional and some people are not, you know. But it doesn't hurt to know what you're feeling, and it makes you. One of my teachers said it makes you more honest, you know, because you stand up for your feeling. I don't mean in a selfish way. I feel you should X, which is just being a control freak. But if you have your sorrow or your loneliness or whatever it is, and then maybe you'll find out that to have sorrow and loneliness is okay. It's not really a problem, and it's part of that wonderful starlight texture of life. And then we're not, you know, a lot of the time I notice with spiritual people, one of the, you know, I'm now old enough to have known a lot of great spiritual teachers, and also I have a lot of spiritual peers, you know, who are teaching for a long time. And one of the great things is that just people get frightened of what they're feeling, you know. One of my friends that I used to teach with occasionally was a physician who was called Rachel Remen, and some of you may have met her. She was, you know, prominent figure in the Bay Area and worked at UCSF teaching. And her basic thing was, can we get doctors to be human beings? Which was always her question, can I get myself to be a human being? So, but, and she said, when I first met her, which must have been in the early 80s or something, then she said, and I later brought her out to teach when I was teaching with medical groups, but she said, I don't know about Zen and Buddha. Buddhists just hate the body and they can't live, you know. And I said, well, we're doing something about that, Rachel. And it's not like we're doing something about that, but we're including it, you know. We're including the fear of the body. The fear of the body is just fear of mortality, you know. And everybody's got that, right? Well, everybody's, you know, there are things I'd like to stay. Like spring is just starting to hit here, which is early. If I want to complain about it, I'd say it's too early. It's obvious evidence of the destruction of the climate and so on, but I'm just enjoying it right now. apricot blossoms, birds chasing each other, unusual birds appearing. There's a demented little bird that's I don't know what it is, but a little sort of thing about chickadee size, but that sort of has found the perfect angle of reflection in one of the high windows and pecks its reflection, And I start to worry every now and again. I put things over the windows. If it goes on for too long, I start to worry for it. But it's clearly like some, larrikin of a bird, like attacking, or a teenage bird attacking all the other birds, so it can have all the girls. So it's like, and so all that stuff happens, and it's sort of part of the beauty of spring, So that's happening. And then I know later on when Basha said, and I know later on I'll be very wistful about it, but she said, departing spring, birds cry out, tears in the eyes of fish. Which is kind of sweet. So that's the same as whatever you have tears for, if it's grief, or grief for your parents, or grief for a lover, or grief for a child, So tears in the eyes of fish. So so again, you can tell that with this koan, the darkness is, Yunmen always wants to take you down, just like Virgil took Dante, wants to take you down, or Greek myth took Persephone and Demeter down, because Keats said, you want to know the purpose of the world? It is the veil of soul making. So there's that, so when you go down, you can tell you're in the vats, and you're deepening, and the creativity is happening, and you're not afraid, and you're not, the other big thing you're not doing is judging yourself, so condemning yourself and criticizing yourself. And that's one of the big things one of the big obstacles where people think that's virtue, to be criticizing themselves. And it's kind of not, you can tell that can't be virtue, And you can tell also it keeps us, in a way, it keeps us safe to think, I'm bad, I shouldn't have done that, or whatever it is. And we can tell it keeps us in this very narrow place where we can't learn things or be welcomed by the world. So one of the things I think koans do when it comes up, or when the inner pain comes up, let the koan into that feeling. If the koan's your friend, maybe it has something to say to it. Maybe the koan can do something with your difficulty and pain. So, or maybe you'll think, oh, I've got to deal with my pain, and you look for it, and there isn't any, because the koan already did that. So could happen. Nice work when you can get it. So yeah. So and I don't know if there's any more here. Yeah, so I suppose the koan is about how to comport yourself when you're approaching the mystery. And that we realize that everything we don't understand is part of the mystery. So, and that to go into the darkness is to welcome the mystery and be nourished by the mystery, which is the whole Tao Te Ching. To the extent we can ever work out what it's about that. The mysterious dark enigma, the valley spirit who never dies, the mysterious womb. And so I think I want to stop there. Then the other thing he said about the storehouse, kitchen storehouse, the gate. The gate is a big, 3-tiered gate in a Chinese temple. You can climb up to the top tier, as sometimes there were different things, but there were rooms there. Sometimes, treasures or relics were stored. Sometimes the ashes of people who lived in the temple. Sometimes abbot's quarters were up there. And so you went past the ashes to get to the abbot's quarters, which is something interesting. So that's a huge building, it's the storeroom, the gate. So that's it too, that's your light. And so he's saying that we are not, well, you know that, but we're not separate from the universe. Somebody said this great thing. I think I got it right. He said it better than this, but he said, my socks were putting me on. It's kind of pretty cool, I thought. So that's it. You too are the temple and the gate. There's something else I wanted to read to you, which is just silly, but lost. But so a person was this guy gave us an olive tree, and it's a very beautiful ancient olive tree, and he said he was just trying to make me happy, make us happy, and he had some spare money lying around, so he decided to buy us a big olive tree, which he knew we wouldn't be able to afford, and that was fine. And it's one of those silly things. Is not, will this make us happy? No. Is it fun? Yes. It's a delightful yes. So he has that tendency to do that. And so so then this guy calls us, who's the olive guy, and he's like, so I'm coming over when? Well, actually, we won't be here then. And so this guy, no matter what you say, he gets in your face. He's very New York, but very anxious and hyper. And we were warned about him. He said, we've got to be able to work with him, but it'll be a spiritual exercise. and the guy's very in your face about everything. So do you have a forklift ready for me? Actually, I don't happen to have a big forklift lying around. That sort of thing. And no, I don't happen to have one today. And so lots of conversations like that. And so then dig a big hole for it. It's like, it's just funny. And then he says, here, send your household insurance pages to this forklift person who needs you to be covered by a contractor's insurance. And so I call my insurance agent and said, no. And the insurance agent says, well, just laughed and said, are you kidding? If the forklift drives in your house, we'll repair it. We are not covering the forklift. So we'll repair the house, not the forklift. And I said, that's kind of what I'd always thought, and no other contractor, etc. So I told him that. And he said, they don't know what they're talking about. And so I said, okay, well, he said, now I'm going to have to charge your friend $500 more or something like that. And so all these conversations like that were going on. And so my friend was away in Kyoto, and so I told him, and he said, well, it's sort of like the waves are banging on the beach, and they're kicking up sand and foam and everything. And after a while, the beach forgets it's a beach and wonders, am I waves or sand? And it's all entangled with the waves, But then after a while, it realized, no, I'm just the beach and the waves are just the waves. I said, good. He does study Zen, but you're studying Zen too, I can tell. So it's like that. And in the midst of the dark, there's the light, He said, before that, he said, he's just high strung. And I said, right. and I said, well, he makes everybody high strung. And that's when my friend sent back the thing about, well, it's like the waves are banging on the beach, and the beach gets confused and thinks, am I waves, am I beach? Who am I? But it's just the beach, and the waves just keep banging. So that was a pretty good metaphor for Zen. So when you try to see it, it's dark, dark. Now, what is your light? That's what it is. So I don't know. It's a big thing we're doing, it's a beautiful thing. And we're finding, we could say to find peace is not to demand peace, which is sort of authoritarian, but to discover peace in the midst of the waves banging on the beach or the darkness. And that's why darkness is so valued in Zen, because it opens the heart, it strips things away. I suppose I'd say that. Some faces just popped out. Tess Beasley, you got anything to say?
Tonight there's like 45-mile-an-hour winds here. And so every time you kept saying, "What is your light?" it just and just now as you were saying that, I thought, yeah, am I wind or am I me? And am I wind or am I me? I'm not sure, but it's a nice question.
You beat your sand. That's wonderful. Ah, Michael Wilding raised his hand. Do you think we should take him? He doesn't like to talk. Can somebody find Michael and unmute him? Oh, excellent. Nice to see you, Michael.
You too. Nice to be here. And I still don't like talking in public. But, it bothered me that I declined the invitation. So I just wanted to say that, and the fact that it bothered me because I learned so much from everyone that enters their voice into the room all the time, and I find that difficult to do, but I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm really impressed by the wisdom and articulation that I hear from everyone that contributes in that way, talks into the room. And, of course, I think, well, I don't have that kind of wisdom, and I certainly can't articulate like that. But I try and do it through music. I try to articulate something and contribute something through playing, and I'm glad I had that opportunity. I don't articulate as much as I'd like, although it doesn't make me break out in a sweat. So I like doing that. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I appreciated the invitation, although it freaked me out a little.
Yeah, I realized it was a bit provocative, but also, it's you're allowed. I'm allowed to keep asking you and saying, Michael, do you have anything to contribute? And you have this wonderful inward quality, and you give us music. You have no obligation, and you're allowed to keep saying, no, I don't. And then it's a beautiful teaching. It's a perfect dialogue. For 18 years,
it was the most honest thing I could think of. I mean, there it was.
Great. Well, I like that. That's one of the things about Zen is to be faithful to what's true in your heart. And thank you. It's very touching to have you come back and tell us that. So, okay, I think we probably got to just sit a little bit and hand back to the Bodhisattva Jan.